All right, here we go, guys. And a couple of weeks ago, I published a video outlining the three proposed summer flounder rules and regulations for New York and Connecticut for 2022. I mentioned that on March 24, the Fisheries Board was scheduled to vote on that, and that vote has happened. Now, the vote is really just a recommendation. There's a final vote, but it's usually a rubber stamp. And we went over three options. Let me just quickly reread them. Option one was 18 inches, 3 fish with a slightly shorter season, May 4 to September 29. And last year it was 4 fish, 19 inches, May 4 to September 30. So this season would have been 1 day less. Not a big deal, but the minimum size would have dropped to 18. Kind of a big deal. We caught a lot of short fluke last year. We'll get into that a little later. Option two, 18 and a half inches, 5 fish with the same season as last year, May 4 to September 30. And then option three, which is the one that was chosen, was 4 fish, 18 and a half inches. So half-inch reduction from last year, same season as last year, but critically a much longer season, May 1 to October 9. So you're gaining 3 days on the back end and 9 days, 3 days on the front end and 9 days on the back end. And that's ultimately what the Fisheries Board voted on. It's going to go to final vote. It looks like it's a rubber stamp. It will likely be the one that happens. And I mentioned in that video 2 weeks ago why I didn't necessarily think this was the greatest idea. Anyone who has fished Long Island, and I hear this all the time from the Jersey guys, the Delaware guys, the last few years, knows there has been a decline in fluke. But the way that the Fisheries Board, NOAA, and some of the other local, state fishery agencies factor into the quotas for the following year isn't necessarily based on whether the fish are there in abundance, but rather it's mostly based on whether the preset quota for that year was met. And if we go to the NOAA website, we'll pull that up right now. If we go to the NOAA website, you'll see that they talk about the stock, the 2021 stock assessment, and summer flounder were not overfished and subject to overfishing. Consequently, they figured we were about 16.5% under our quota. We'll give it to you guys the next year, i.e. 2022. But what they're not thinking is there are more boats out there fishing than ever. Montauk is a parking lot. And people just aren't catching the fish anymore in the numbers we were 3-4 years ago. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's sustainable. But to me, it's emblematic of a bigger problem that, hey, maybe we're putting a lot of pressure on these fish and maybe we need to think about slowing it down. There's a reason with that many boats out there that the quota wasn't met. It's because the keepers aren't there. Again, in my opinion, flawed logic, but good news for anglers. The bright side, we'll get a longer season. It's good for me as a charter guy. I can take a charter now on that first Sunday. I can add a couple trips to the back end of the fluke season. We can keep slightly smaller fish. People will have more fish for the table. But again, in my opinion, the logic used, and again, I hate harping on this, but anyone who fished the Buoy 5 area in Eastern Long Island on the Sound knows the precipitous drop in fluke. Anyone who's fished Montauk the last 3 years has seen the steady decline. It's not a question. It's not, has it? Yeah, I can't tell. No, it was not unusual to limit in a couple of hours in Montauk, to have folks on the boat with double, triple, quadruple limits. I can't tell you how many times Skinner had 12 keepers on our boat in 2017, 2018, 2019. Not so the last 2 years. And I think we're putting a lot of pressure on these fish. And logic like this, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. But to be fair to these guys, there's no simple answer. There's no magic cure for this, right? And at its base, using the quotas from the last year to determine the quotas for this year kind of makes sense. But when you dig deeper and if you talk to people with local knowledge, they'll tell you it doesn't. What do you think? I'm not going to get into slot limits. It's a very controversial subject. If you look at the last video, you know how I feel about that. I think that would be a good solution. Keep the big fish for breeding, take the little ones for the table, but that's my opinion only. We're not gonna, other than this 10-second little summary of that, we're not gonna get into that. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you do like these videos, hit that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber and you like content like this, please consider subscribing.